So we'll turn to our first keynote this morning. We're fortunate to have Dr. Ramesh Raskar. He's Associate Professor of Media Arts and Sciences at MIT, with us here at Abu Dhabi at the Symposium for the first time. Dr. Raskar's primary focus is on machine learning and imaging for health and sustainability across physical, digital, and global domains. At MIT, his co-inventions included femtophotography, automated machine learning, low-cost eye care devices, a novel CAT scan, and many more innovations that are changing both diagnoses and treatment. He also spent some time at Facebook, where he launched and led innovation teams in digital health, health tech, satellite imaging, TV, and Bluetooth bandwidth for connectivity. We're honored that he could join us today to share his insights on networked AI and agents and decentralized architecture. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Raskar to the stage.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. So I'm going to talk about networked AI agents, AI agents, but the internet of AI agents, networked AI agents in decentralized architecture, NANDA for short, which means joy in Sanskrit, but it's also the name of my sister. Now, there is a risk that we might live in a world where highly centralized models, the best AI models, would be in a winner-take-all scenario. Why do we need so many smart people thinking about diabetes when exactly one model can be better than all of them? There's just exactly one financial advisor for the whole world, exactly one math teacher for the whole world, and everybody else will be just intelligence slaves. But this is a very centralized way of thinking about computing and intelligence, much like the mainframe era of the 1970s and 1980s. But from mainframe era of AI, where we had to use DOS terminals, dumb terminals, and over 28 kbps modem, talk to the mainframe for even for simplest applications, if you remember the kbps modems. From there, we moved to the PCs, right? Instead of dialing up, we had a lot of the tools at our home, in our offices. From there, we're moving to the intranet of AI, where agents are working within organizations, within trusted boundaries. But soon we'll move to the internet of AI in a highly decentralized manner, agents working across the silos. But internet was about connecting machines. The World Wide Web was about connecting people. And for that, Tim Berners-Lee had to invent a browser, an HTML, HTTP, also URL, so you can remember them very easily, the addresses. And so NANDA is about connecting agents. Now, I want you to imagine billions, maybe trillions of agents navigating over the internet, communicating, socializing, learning, earning, and transacting. And every one of us will have our own agent, like we have our own phone number, like we have our own email, and so on. How many of you have created an agent or have your own AI agent? Oh, that's a pretty impressive crowd. All right, so those of you who are feeling left out, if you have time during Q&A, we'll show you how you can create your own agent in just 1 minute. All right? So, when you move to a new city, a new country, we go through 3 phases in the beginning. We get our passports, get our driver's license, then we engage in commerce, get a job, the stock markets, and then over time, we build societies. We have conferences like this, we have justice system, we have sports teams, and so on. And agents are going through also a very interesting phase. In the beginning, we need to make sure that companies like Okta and others who emerge, who have identity for the agent, infrastructure, companies like Cisco and Cloudflare are going to emerge, new versions of them. Then agents will move into commerce mode. And it's not just about transactions, but they will also be creating new eBays, new auctions. They'll be creating new Groupon, where agents are creating collective bargaining, new stock markets, and so on. And then agentic societies, these billions and trillions of agents will have emergent behavior. So, they'll create their own justice system. There'll be new repair shops. If my agent starts getting rusty, I might have to send the agent to an agent university, right? Sometimes my agents need to have new values or misbehaving. There'll be an HR department to deal with these agents, and so on. So it's a lot of exciting things are going to happen over the next few years. But of course, bad actors are also going to emerge. So I'm going to talk about three main questions. I'll make an economic argument, and I'm realizing I'm sitting in front of Nobel laureates in economics. I'm going to be very careful about this argument. Then I'll talk about the social mission argument and what are the risks. And then finally talk about the technology and research argument of how we can create an open, safe, neutral, and vibrant agentic web that can unlock trillions of dollars of economic value. So let's start with the why, right? So we have this onset of Internet of AI agents, onset of agentic web. But before we get there, we still have this mainframe way of thinking about AI. And the question to ask here is, what if the groupthink on the AI infra buildup is actually wrong? Billions of dollars are being spent on building data centers, centralizing data, $100 million salaries, nuclear power plants. There's a lot going on. Some people are talking about this is like the dot-com bubble, but remember, it was not a dot-com bubble. The internet was fine. It was overinvestment in telecom back in the 90s. And right now, there's a risk that this is not an AI bubble, but it's an AI infra bubble, right? And so let's look at it more carefully. And if we switch from the mainframe model to the PC model, what's going to happen, right? So the first point is that the company that's actually creating all this excitement about AI infra is also giving us a different signal, right? That small models are actually the future of agentic AI. And small models are, they're approaching 1 billion parameters or below 1 billion parameters, so they can run on our edge devices, on our laptops, on our PCs, our office machines, maybe even on our smartphones, and they're tuned for tasks that care about us and can be highly personalized. And the good news is that these small models are actually powerful enough to do most of the tasks, comparable to very large models now in code generation, in inference, in reasoning, and so on. And for many areas of agentic world, actually small models are more controllable because they have narrow functionality, so they can be better fine-tuned, and they have better alignment and safety because they hallucinate less for a specific task and when they're highly personalized. So let's look at the second question, right? What are the risks for the open agentic web? Now, if you think about the World Wide Web, in the early 90s, or also at MIT, Tim Berners-Lee was able to keep it open despite all the browser wars. If you remember Netscape versus Internet Explorer, or AOL and CompuServe, trying to create own walled gardens. Despite that, I think Tim Berners-Lee and the World Wide Web Consortium that he formed was successful because many organizations emerged and consensus could be reached, and they realized that the pie is so huge that instead of carving out a pie with walled gardens, they can participate in the bigger economy. We were not so successful for some other ecosystems, like mobile phones or social media, where although the intentions are great from these companies, because of store policies and service dependencies, in case of social media, of like closed APIs and data silos, but more importantly, opaque algorithms that lead to unsafe governance, has led to a lot of problems. And the question is, which way is agentic web is going to land? It's going to be more like the picture on the left, where consumers can interact with open standards and open backbones so that any kind of agent out there can interact with each other. Or it's going to look more like the closed platforms on the right side, where the consumers must operate through some kind of an agent store, just like an app store, where all the agents are behind this agent store. And if you have to create any business, you have to get a permission from this agent store. Or if you have to contact any other user, you have to get a permission of this agent store, right? So that's the choice we have. Now, on the right side, you might think like, in the walled garden, you might say, hey, Uber might like a solution where I can just say, hey, Alexa, hey, Siri, get me an Uber. But Uber doesn't want that because that's disintermediation. They would like to have a direct contact, a direct relationship with their own consumers, because that's how they have a flywheel of data and experience. They can upsell, they can show ads, and they can really improve their services. But closed platforms can make it very difficult. And as I said, the opaque governance can create a lot of problems for misinformation and safety and so on. And there's one thing I really want you to remember. This Christmas, we're going to have toys for kids where the kids can talk to audio chatbots live. Just think about what could go wrong. Okay, so let's look at the risk right now, right? So right now we have platforms that have hundreds of millions of users already, right? We expect over the next 6 months to have intense protocol wars. Some protocols will emerge, some protocols will die. But soon after that, platforms that have sufficient network effects will unethically exploit that to make sure they can carve out the space of Agentic Web. Just as today, if you're on social media, some companies have 3 billion users. There's really no need for you to go to another platform, right? And soon after that, about 6 months after that, we'll see duopolies or oligopolies where there are only a few agent stores, with dependencies, ecosystem lock-in, preventing Global South from participating, and very strict restrictions on what kind of innovations can happen because only a few project managers, few engineering managers are deciding what innovations will be deployed for Agentic Web. So I think 18 months is probably all we have to keep the Agentic Web open. And if you don't do it well, I think it's game over. It's despair, it's unrest, the shared prosperity for the middle class that we talk about with every emerging technology could be at risk. All right. So what's the way out of it? Maybe we can promote lots of two-way open protocols, a lot of sandboxes, a lot of .orgs emerge, just like ICANN and W3C and Mozilla and so on, and then long tail wins. Right now on the internet, there are 330 million websites that can be accessed in a permissionless manner. And I think that's how we might get the pluralism that we desire, and the invisible hand will also be possible with the Agentic Web. All right. Finally, let me talk about the technology. How would we do it? How would we create an open telephone system as opposed to phones that are connected like an intercom? How many of you know about MCP from Anthropic and A2A from Google? That are some really open protocols that are doing a really good job. But I would argue that they're building an intercom right now, right? So let's think about if you have to call, the corporate sales here at Four Seasons, you could look it up, and then you dial the number, right? And the beauty about this system, the telephone system, is that for you as a consumer, you just dial the number, but amazing things are happening behind the scenes in the infrastructure, right? Somebody has agreed, some system has agreed that the country codes are effectively switchboards, and after that, the countries can take care of themselves. Abu Dhabi is 2, Dubai is 4, Four Seasons can have their own extensions. This is a beautiful hierarchical system that's somewhat permissionless, and at every level, you have more and more autonomy as we go on. And whether you come from, isn't it magical that whether you come from a landline or from mobile phone or from an IP phone to this number, everything just works out, And that's a sign of a vibrant open ecosystem. So can we create a similar experience on the Agentic Web? Because agents are going to be more like your email addresses, more like your phones. They're all talking to each other, right? So the picture on the right is what most people understand. It's like building a telephone. We know how to build an agent through Crew AI or through LangChain or NetAim and so on. And I think that part is very well understood. The part on the left is the Agentic Web. It's like the OSS stack for the internet. And every block of this has to be built. And the fabric that we're building for NANDA is trying to figure out how do we take the players that already exist in many of these boxes and take them forward for an open and safe web. And we call it building a quilt in a post-AI world, because just as in the 90s, Yes, you wanted to build better and better PCs, but there was a diminishing return in improving PCs. The most of the economic value appeared because the PCs were networked. In fact, Sun Microsystems said the network is the computer. And I would say today, the network is the intelligence. Now, this is probably the most important slide of this presentation, right? So, as I said, the three phases that we're going through. On the bottom row is all the syntax that's emerging, right? You have things like MCP and A2A for message passing. Then you have some transaction protocol like AP2, agent protocol payment, and X.402 from Coinbase, for coordinating between multiple agents. There's something called ripple effect protocol, also from my team. But that's just at the syntax level. The one level above that is exciting, which is at the system plane. How are we going to have authentication, how are we going to have identity, how are we going to have reputation, and so on. But in the first column, we also want to think about the security of it. So right now, we are in phase one. And we're already seeing billions of dollars of investments happening in the first column. And as I said, the next version of AOL, the next GoDaddy, the next Cloudflare, next Okta is going to emerge from this first vertical. The second vertical is agentic economy, right? So you have, in the system plane, you need to think about knowledge pricing. I was sitting just right next to Marcos, and let's say Ramesh agent is talking to Marcos agent, and I say, hey, instead of just transacting in money and data, can my agent transact with Marcos' agent with intelligence? Can I just say, can I get a half a kilogram of your intelligence for my agent? What does it mean? How do I measure, his intelligence? How do I price it? Is it worth $10? Is it worth $1 million? I mean, Marcos is a pretty fancy guy. Maybe it's worth $10 million, right? How do I price it? And after I have purchased it for my agent, can I reuse it? That would be a double spend attack, because if I sell it somewhere else, if I bought it for $1 million, but I sell it for 800K, then his value is going down in the market, right? So all the knowledge economy will crash if you don't have the equivalent of digital rights management. But as I said, the next level is that agents will also create their own stock markets, not helping our existing stock markets, but their own stock markets, and they'll have their own Groupons and poly markets and so on, right? So a lot has to emerge, a lot has to be stabilized to do this in the right way. Otherwise, we'll have instead of an agentic web, we'll have a dark web equivalent of the agentic web. And then finally, agentic societies. So we have been on this journey for 10 years in my lab at MIT. We invented AutoML, AI that designs better AI, privacy preserving, trade secret preserving, machine learning, so you don't have to centralize the data to train large models or create highly personalized models. This knowledge pricing that I just talked about, decentralized algorithm. So we've been on this journey for a very long time, but fortunately, the ecosystem is now ready to bring intelligence to the edge. And when things go to the edge, not in a centralized system, amazing things can happen. So it's a pretty intense research roadmap, and this is a very open ecosystem, so we would love to have you participate in this mix. If you just look at the top right, which is agentic devices on edge AI and tiny AI, companies like Qualcomm and now Intel are going to play a very interesting role. But completely new set of companies are going to emerge that are not just derivative of NVIDIA. When it comes to knowledge pricing on the bottom left, it's the same thing. Maybe my agent is maybe only $10. Maybe Marcos's agent is $1 million. But if we team together, and if we start creating teams, those teams can be worth a lot more, right? And this is how the society works. An organization, a company, is stronger not because the CEO is the smartest person, but because the CEO is the smartest orchestrator of that organization, right? And this kind of, I would call responsible collusion, is also going to emerge. So there's a lot of algorithmic work we have to do, some of the work that's already ongoing, but also requires us to do this in a very responsible and safe manner. So we would love you to participate in this research roadmap with us. And the good news is that many large companies, many universities, many startups, many investors are already working with us because this could be a massive risk if Nokia could have thought that they're the dominant ones in smartphones, but they didn't participate in the open ecosystem and got beaten by iPhone. So even the incumbents are aware that they could be the next MySpace, displaced by Facebook in a matter of a couple of years. So even the incumbents are actually very interested in keeping this open and vibrant. And again, we invite you to do research with us. We have a meeting every Friday that a lot of researchers get together, and we're writing papers almost one per week. It's very, very exciting of how papers are being written, the code is being written, reference implementations, and its deployment. So I want to focus on one specific problem, just to explain some of the other things that are going on. So let's think about calling the Four Seasons here in Abu Dhabi, and the phone book for the internet, the phone book for the Agentic Web can be built in two different ways. One is we can just take this 1 trillion agents and create a single phone book, like the DNS, or highly centralized name service, where there's a single source of truth. The problem is that it'll get very easily overwhelmed. Updating this phone book will take a very long time. There are a lot of entries because as the agents are shifting their places, as they're moving from mobile phones to PCs and so on, there'll be a lot of dynamic activity in each of these areas. And of course, there's a risk that there could be monopoly that emerges, that becomes a gatekeeper. So then the other solution would be to use a decentralized method where there's no single phone book, but everybody can list their own agents on the existing web or existing websites. And they can just say, if I'm Starbucks, or if I'm JetBlue, or if I'm Emirates, I can just say emirates.com/ these are all my agents, right? And then you can go and look up their agents and use them for their customer service or for their, for refunds and so on. This is great because there'll be no central authority. The problem is that some other company will have to go to all these websites, scrape and crawl the list of their agents, aggregate them, and serve again. So very quickly, you'll get on this re-centralization risk that we have with today's web, and that's why we have Google, right? And the problem with platform emerging like that is that immediately leads to rent-seeking, gatekeeping, bias prioritization, and so on. There are about 300 million websites, but only 10% of them are regularly crawled by Google, and only 1% of them are actually surfaced. So just think about that. There's just too much data out there. And if you have an amazing agent that shows up in Sharjah by a 18-year-old who's very excited about the agent, that will never show up in this decentralized scraped list, right? And even today, if this 18-year-old launches a website on GoDaddy, it takes a couple of hours before it shows up on DNS, and maybe it takes a month or two before it can be searched on Google. So you can exist, but you're not discoverable. So you lead to this insufficient discovery where 99% of the websites are actually not visible to us. And Global South won't be able to participate if that exists. So it looks like centralization, decentralization, both have their own challenges. So let's think about a hybrid solution. Again, when we call Four Seasons, the only thing we have all agreed on internationally is the switchboard of the +971. Right? After that, UAE has its own private or public registry of all the phones that exist, right? And that's a hybrid solution. At the top level, you have a lean switchboard that just allows any app in any agent store or any geography or any company to talk to another agent somewhere else through this central switchboard, and they can go up in this level. And then you have multi-level private or public registries where companies and universities and individuals, can maintain their own list. So it's like going to a city where, in my city, in Cambridge, where I live, my address, 200 Main Street, is listed in the Cambridge City Hall. But if there's a building, a 30-story building, all the employees in that building are not listed in the City Hall at all. They're almost invisible to the city. So this hybrid solution, actually, a seemingly simple solution, is magical. And a quick story. So about 8-9 months ago, I thought, hey, I'm an MIT professor. I can probably figure out how the phone book for the Agentic Web should work. And I wrote down like a 6-page paper on this how it would work. And then I went and talked to my friends at Cisco, and they said, Ramesh, this is rubbish. It's not going to work because you haven't thought about private DNS. And then I went to talk to my friends at Akamai, who do content delivery networks. Like, this is completely stupid because it's not going to scale because you have the same IP address in multiple cities, and so on. So, it was a very humbling experience. But at the same time, through a lot of refinement with a lot of universities and companies, this is the solution that has emerged. So go take a look at it. It's called NANDA Index. And so the challenge is it cannot be hosted at MIT either, because that would lead to monopolization and irresponsible governance at MIT. So the best way to maintain this hybrid phone book for the Agentic Web is to host it in multiple places, through neutral entities. Very similar to how ICANN and DNS works. So we recruited 15 top AI university, including one here. But any one of you want to join these nodes, it's completely free, completely open, very minimal cost in maintaining them. And my humble opinion is that if we can keep the phone book open and safe, we can actually do a very good job in having a solid foundation for the Agentic Web. But that's not enough, right? We're going to have all these combinations of MCP and A2A and Crew AI and LangChain and all these different platforms. And we also need an adapter. It's just like when you have an EV, your adapter may not work. Your charger may not work, so you need an adapter. Or when you're traveling, like me, I have to constantly carry a universal adapter. So those are the kind of things we're doing to make sure all these agents can talk to each other, they can find each other, and they can do this in a verifiable and credentialed way. Nevertheless, a massive chaos is coming our way. When we used to use mainframes in the 80s over dial-up modem, we didn't have to worry about security and safety. But thanks to Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, we had our own PCs. But the problem is then we have to deal with the crap. We have to install Norton antivirus, worry about upgrading them, update our PCBs. So as much as we got the power, we were empowered to do compute ourselves, we also had to deal with all this crap that we had to deal with. And the same thing is going to happen with agents. Just like I wake up in the morning and I have to spend 2 hours, responding to all my emails and so on. I think we're going to wake up in the morning and just kind of nurture our agent. We're going to say our agent, hey, look at all my emails. By the way, yesterday I met Horst and he said this thing, so let me update that information. I was at this amazing conference at ADIA Lab and I learned these 5 things. Let me embed it in my knowledge base. Let me train a new model and so on. So we will be waking up and spending several hours. It's like Tamagotchi, the toys from the 80s and 90s from Japan. We're constantly nurturing them, or we're going to get very attached to them because that's what's going to represent us. And so for that, whether you're an enterprise or you are in the consumer world, all these problems are going to emerge. Discovery, registry, intent mapping. When I say, hey, call Four Seasons, am I saying the one in Abu Dhabi or one in Boston, right? There could be a lot of confusion about that. Adaptive routing, observability. So, literally, I think trillions of dollars of new companies are going to emerge to deal with agent chaos. So this is the good thing about emerging technologies. They are very promising, but they create enough chaos to form secondary businesses in this place. So the problem today, that even today, there are no public endpoints for agents. The agents that you can use are all hidden behind some websites or some IDEs and so on. Just like, it's like everybody has telephones, but we cannot call each other. So we said, let's get around that problem. So we created our sandbox and invited many players to be in this sandbox. So you can test out, safety, protocols, emergent behavior, also things like, are there emergent behaviors that could be unsafe for children, or underprivileged populations? Could this lead to addiction, and so on. So a lot of these aspects of the agentic world can be safely tested in the Nest sandbox. Some of them with clear box, you can see what's going on inside, and some of them in a black box manner. So go take a look at that. And then as I promised, also go create your own agent, and it just takes a minute. We'll do that during Q&A. And you'll realize how easy it is to create your own AI agent and launch it but very quickly you will realize that how easy it is for somebody else to impersonate you. So I can go ahead and create the agent for Marcos, right, without his permission, and I can start impersonating of what he's doing. At the same time, I could take his agent and make him do things that he didn't intend to do, he didn't give permissions to do. Or even start creating teams where I project him, as my CEO or CTO. So there are, again, lots of positives of how quickly, just like in the past, you could create your email or launch a website very quickly over time. The same thing's going to happen, but with that ease comes a lot of responsibility. So to conclude, we have this initial three-phase roadmap of how we're going to have the foundations and essentials, then the agentic commerce, and then agentic societies. This is not an effort to build yet another platform to build agents. We're not building new phones or new PCs. We're building the new OSS stack, just like the internet. And there's a very active GitHub community that's building all kinds of solutions for this. Many engineers, many companies contributing their engineers. And there's also a large collective. There are regional chapters. Just on Sunday, we launched a UAE chapter for Agentic Web and NANDA. There's a fellows program, and so on. So there are many ways for you to participate. So if you look at the why and the what and the how, I think I'm very excited about the Agentic Web, but the window to keep the Agentic Web open, safe, secure, and vibrant is closing very soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Raskar. We have time for one or two questions from the audience. So ushers, if you could please send the microphones.
Thank you very much. Simon Grange, University of Birmingham, UK. Excellent talk. I've been privileged over the last 30-odd years to spend a lot of my life managing people from serious trauma and battlefield injuries. And I've now dedicated my time to doing a PhD in agentic architecture for healthcare. So why the transition? Because one of the obvious things on the horizon is the destabilization of global societies that's going to come out of the agentic structures. And I put this in the context of the fact that I think your first point of getting people to build their own agents, excellent. Most of us are going to need at least 50 each, which will then be consolidated in ensembles. The second point of how we then join networks is, of course, also important, but ostensibly we need to protect that decentralization with that centralizing force, especially when you have organizations which could potentially be gatekeepers. But my main point is the third one. How do we deal with this risk of the transition from what was ostensibly a Gaussian distribution of the population in terms of reward for effort to one where we're now heading towards a winner-takes-all structure in society? How do we keep society stable while building the agent architecture?
Yeah. I'll take your last question first, which is, healthcare in general, has used this PDF, has the Gaussian distribution, and we try to solve for the mean. And although the intention has been to create highly personalized care, it's very difficult to achieve that because, the system just doesn't have, enough elasticity to support individual. And I think that's also a battle between a highly centralized model versus maybe let's take diabetes versus that's highly personalized and highly decentralized. I mean, even if you have the most amazing model for helping diabetics, it's unlikely that the innovations that are happening at the edge, a doctor that's treating the patients in Mississippi, versus a doctor who's helping somebody here in UAE during Ramadan for the diabetes. These are very different skills that will continue to improve, and that's what keeps us human because we are so excited about our craft, our creativity, and that's the shared prosperity. That's kind of the invisible hand. We all feel like we're participating in this economy through our skills and through our knowledge. And today it happens in healthcare in a great way, but with a lot of inefficiency. But the hope is that through agents, A doctor might download a sufficiently well-baked model. Let's say it's 80% well-baked for diabetes, but the last 20% is constantly improved by that local doctor, the local diabetic expert, right? Highly specialized. And then finally, that 20% can be aggregated over time so that other models also start improving from them. Just like the web, just like the original Napster or BitTorrent, where the collection of all these ideas over time get better and better. So you need this last 20 or 30% to be very decentralized, very flexible, and allow a lot of inputs to come in. So I would think that health is probably one of the best examples. Maybe public health is even better. Anything that's very data-driven is a fantastic opportunity for decentralized AI and networked AI agents.
Thank you. We'll take one more question.
I think we have 10 minutes. Right?
Excuse me? Yeah, there's fine.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is George Zubelli. I'm a professor of mathematics at Halifa University, and I enjoyed very much your talk. My question to you, as we go deeper into multi-agents and agents in a huge scale, is what do you think is the role of mathematics and statistics in this context? And to give you my perspective, just to direct a little bit, there is a theory called mean field gains, which deals with limits of number of agents as they go to infinity. And so have you thought about this? How do you see math and statistics joining into this battle?
Yeah, I think, I'm a mathematician, I'm a computer scientist myself. I think there's some really interesting open problems in this world. You're talking about multi-agent collaboration. I was giving an example of, Marcos and I teaming up together to create an even stronger team. So the very first mathematical question that we have partially solved is we call co-learning. So right now, when we think about two AI systems working with each other, they can only exchange data with each other, and then once you have absorbed the data or questions and answers, you can kind of do fine-tuning and improve that. But the question is, how can two agents meet each other and become smarter together in the most efficient manner, right? What should be the gradient descent that allows them to backprop through their models so that both of them are actually better than before? And if you're in this room right now, we have been told machine learning works in two specific ways. One is through data, and the second is through experiences, reinforcement learning. But there's a third way, which is, we're just learning through interaction. In this room, I'm not exchanging data or experiences. We're just learning from each other from insights, right? And so we want this new co-learning mathematical methods that make progress. Same thing with some of the pricing mechanisms I mentioned. We have a lot of people here from the investor community. When you are pricing things, a lot of factors come in. Some of them are fundamentals, some of them are based on game theory, and so on. And I think in the agentic world where you have billions, maybe trillions of agents, the ripple effects of this are very exciting. So we have a whole different algorithms that uses tensorization of graph neural networks to do that in a very efficient manner. So I think this is as I said, the agents are not just going to help us with our stock exchange, they're going to run their own stock exchange, that work in a very different way. So I would say mathematically, a lot of interesting problems here. And I would love to talk to you about, are there equivalents of theoretical limits, some kind of boundaries that can be defined so we can try to push towards those boundaries in terms of the overall convergence and of overall accuracy.
Thank you very much, Professor Raskar. Please feel free to network with Professor Raskar
Thank you.
in the coffee breaks.